If you don't have an agenda, there's a pile of them there. Last month's agenda.
That's May 8th.
Oh, that's me.
I did it. Oh, it's right there, sorry.
No, sorry. I just didn't update.
You just didn't, you didn't put the right date on it. That's fine.
Okay,
Sorry.
there's the agenda.
We had a detail slip right there. So we'll start with number 1. It's status of command reports. As the mayor reported, Chief Gallagher will not join us today as he's in a traffic situation. He's okay, but he's just unable to join us at this time. Fran, would you like to go ahead and give your report?
Yeah, I can be brief. It was a relatively inconsequential month. 29 calls, 8 in the borough. Nothing terribly significant. The only thing that we had going on is last night, which is not for last month. We began training with our new self-contained breathing apparatus, and we expect to put them in service on the trucks sometime around the beginning of the month.
Okay.
That's really the only significant action that we have going on at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I guess we're going to skip the social media policy unless you have it, Mayor, and you'd like to have that conversation.
I had a brief conversation with the chief this morning, so he'll fill you in on the details. I can tell you that our social media policy is only 5 years old. It is up to date. It has been recently reissued to the officers. The gist of it is if an officer has something on his social media page that identifies him as
Or Instagram or any of that stuff.
Any kind of social media.
Right.
That's all inclusive. If anything on a social media page that identifies him as a police officer or in any way ties him to the borough, they must comport themselves with high standards. In terms of if they indicate some sort of bad behavior or animosity or anything inappropriate, and it identifies them with the borough, that would be a problem, and that would be a violation of the policy. So it is a current policy, in as much as it's only 5 years old, and that's considered fairly current, and it's been updated and looked at and re-handed out to the officers as a reminder of their responsibilities while on social media.
I really appreciated the chief. I wrote to the chief and the mayor to ask after the Plainview project revealed their social media assessment of 8 police forces nationally, Philadelphia being one of them, and the email response that the chief within hours replied to went beyond just the written policy. It was saying that we are a force that demands integrity and unbiased and safe policing to everyone. So I appreciate kind of the spirit behind that policy, as well as just what's the written rules.
Absolutely.
Mr. McGreevy, anything?
So the highlighted sections are what's being updated? Is that, in the draft that I was reading, there were several highlighted parts?
I believe it's just updating language, and I'm sure
there was some language.
There was language
that's right.
Sort of dated in what it dealt with.
And some of the language included positions that we don't have in the borough. It was made perhaps a little bit of a work in progress in terms of language.
I think it said newspaper at one point or something like that, which should be updated for all media sources.
I think at one point it referred to superintendent, and so they referred to positions. It was just cleaning up the technical language of the policy, but the spirit of the policy has been in place for 5 years.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Is there anything else any other details?
That's all I have at this
Sean,
point.
anything about that?
As it's updated, it's just something that you and John worked together on, and with your executive powers authorized and put into place, and then that's pretty much the process. My question is to the process.
Yes, John starts crafting. Chief Gallagher. I'm sorry. Chief Gallagher has looked at the information and crafted it, sent it over to me for review, and then with my comments and input, and we worked together to craft it into the appropriate policy. It is.
You don't need any involvement from council or our
solicitor.
Policies are the domain of the mayor.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But are you running any of it by Solicitor Walker?
I hadn't, but I certainly could.
I would suggest so,
Yeah, certainly
but,
could.
you know, I leave it to you and John to figure out, but it is my suggestion.
Yeah.
Just to make sure all the i's and the t's in there.
Absolutely happy to have another set of eyes on it.
Great.
I'm not above it.
Nope, thank you very much, appreciate that. Next up is under, where are we? Number 2, information items, a discussion of the capital plan and public safety spending. So, council and the public saw the presentation Mr. Metrick gave regarding our capital plan and expenditures thereof, maybe. And because some of those items, you know, the capital plan is meant to be flexible, it's meant to be changed if needed, but there are items I'm sure that council members have been looking at and have questions about. So Mr. McGreevy, if you have anything you'd like to discuss or add or have a question about, we'll start.
Well, at the council meeting, I mentioned the vehicle. We discussed the vehicles. So, you know, that's just something that I would be interested in having a plan, trying to get out in front of the changes we're going to see in terms of electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. So whatever's possible given the purchasing process. Right. And it may be different 5 years from now, quite a bit different 5 years from now.
I think it's different in this moment from when we start, right? From when you started and when I started 5 years ago. We're in a very different position.
It changes every year.
Yeah, it changes. And I think there's some discussion of getting that list of vehicle purchases from the CoStar program. I can't remember that word. And to see what's on there, what's available. And as I think Cindy or someone brought up at the council meeting, that there was an opportunity maybe for the parking card, when it's time to replace that car, that there would be some amount of discussion and maybe availability to have either a hybrid or an electric car for that specific purchase. Something I would look at for sure. We do have, as was mentioned, the information hopefully coming from Lower Merion. We can ask them for. Now theirs is barely a year old. They did use a hybrid. They are using 1 or 2 hybrid or I think it's hybrid vehicles for their police department. And they are, we can certainly check with them and see how that's going and ask them for some sort of update or report. And they are using it for police cars. So I'd like to get some data from them. I know other police departments are using different kinds of vehicles to see what works best for what they need. And I don't think that there's, I don't think it's a big hurdle for us in this room to entertain the idea or to have that conversation about, you know, how we're going to move towards a less impactful vehicles.
Keep in mind that vehicles have to be able to function in all kinds of weather.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
Yeah, so.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that's right. And I spoke with the chief about it, and he had some safety concerns. You know, so I can understand. But maybe we'll be in a position a few years from now or sooner to think about the carbon price, you know, involved in certain vehicles. So if we do have to buy a gasoline vehicle, maybe we can offset that in some way within our borough operations.
I think you're right. I would encourage that. Sure. Obviously. Mr. Metrick, what would you like to share with us?
Well, it's a hard conversation to be having without John in the room.
Yeah.
John and I have talked extensively, and I raised that concern about that whatever fleet replacement idea comes up, it has to be right-sized for Narberth, and council will likely want to see smaller, more fuel-efficient options, cheaper options, and reuse options, repurposing existing fleet to other purposes. Is it feasible to take a patrol car and make it parking controller's car? And that parking controller's car is by far the oldest one in the fleet.
Yeah.
But and John is completely right. We've put a lot of money in it lately. But I think that, you know, listen, I drive a car with 190,000 miles on it. You either spend them with payment or you spend on them with repairs and maintenance. I guess the question we all need to consider in the short term is a purchase of the main
Yeah.
This is a main vehicle replacement and what John has asked for. And I feel bad stepping on his toes a little bit with the ideas behind it, so I'll pull back a little bit in that it's a vehicle that he wants to have as a major operations vehicle potentially.
Are you talking the
Four-wheel
large,
drive.
all-inclusive
Yes.
vehicle?
That's what I
Yeah.
got out of the presentation and the conversations. The question before council, is that going to be a purchase that we make in the next 12 months? And it's no small number. $57,000 is a lot for the borough of Narberth. And that's the decision that council is going to have to make about whether that's the appropriate expenditure at this time. And we have the tasers. There's another 1920 purchase item, much smaller in scale, but probably we want to discuss that with him too. We have it priced at $3,000. And there's some coming replacements in the out years of the capital plan that John has looked at.
Right.
So the question council has to answer is it a purchase
We're gonna
that
go around the
council's
table,
going to
so
want to fund, and are you going to want to fund it in this 12-month cycle starting July 1?
Mr. McGreevy, anything?
We'll have to discuss that with the chief. I mean, just
Yeah.
the rationale
Challenging,
for
right.
why this fiscal year versus next fiscal year.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So when we look at the 12-month cycle, we look at I'm back in 18. We look at 1920, right? We look at 1819, we look at 1920. So in that 12-month cycle, before we're back here again to have the conversation in the summertime about budgeting going forward. So that's the 12th cycle that we're, the conversation we're having. Cindy?
I would offer,
Sorry.
I apologize. And I would offer, if you all have questions for John, we could maybe set up a conference call as long as you don't have pre-decisional conversations amongst each other on the call. And it's just information exchange. We can set that up if you have some more questions about it.
2 quick comments. The first is I think the taser is imperative. We need a yellow taser. I mean, just 4 months ago in Bucks County, or neighboring Bucks County, an officer pulled a taser that looks exactly like a gun, mistakenly, and shot someone. I think that's an absolute safety issue. $3,000, not only does it protect the life of citizens, it also protects the borough from potential future litigation with a really simple mistake. So I wholeheartedly support that. The vehicle, I do have some questions about, for example, the percentage of time that would even be in use in the borough versus LM. So let's say, God forbid, there is a tragedy, right? We know LM is on coverage 24/7. Our force is not. I would want some more
State
information.
police is less than a mile and a half.
Exactly.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
before
got
I
it.
could even decide
Got it.
whether to make a commitment on $57,000, I think I want some information and data
Yeah,
on
some broader data, sure.
from emergency management systems of what response time would be before we can make a call like that.
Sure.
So those are questions for the
Understood.
chief.
Fran, anything?
No.
I would echo what Councilwoman Rickards said.
Sure.
With the tasers, I think that is an imperative spend earlier than later. It is a safety issue for both our officers and the public community, and so I think that's money well spent. Earlier than later, sooner than later. And with the car, with the vehicle, we can talk. We can talk about the options and how do we, make do with what we have for, for the current year, but looking ahead as to future needs of the department. And yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, I think a broader data set is needed, and that's what we were hoping to, but we'll certainly get with John and have that
Of course.
conversation about the request of information needed. I think that one of the things in my time here that what we look at is trying to find a balance between all of the departments or the committees, and requests from some departments are low some years and more from other departments, and it all depends on what's happening in the borough. We know that Public Works, in my time here, in 5 years and soon to be 5 months, the request from the Public Works Department has been rather minimal. And finding a balance between what they need and having an assessment from that department, and I'm not saying versus what we do here at Public Safety, but having at least a broader conversation to say, like, are we as a budget as a whole, is there an opportunity to proceed forward with the larger tactics? We know that Public Works is going to be under, in this coming year. The larger pieces they're going to have to start working with, the bridge and the roads and all of those pieces and what's needed there, unforeseen expenditures. So I'm urging caution, caution, if we could. Mr. Metrick, anything else on this particular issue? I mean, what's been presented from the chief, I apologize.
No.
So I think the next piece, and maybe you all are familiar with the phrase the Kanahara, and I mentioned it to Sean. It means the jinx, right? It means you put the hex on yourself, or you put the hex. Kanahara. And so my friends from New York say Kanahara, with a very heavy New York accent. And, so we've said in the past 10 days or so, we have said repeatedly, like, bad things happen in good places. We've been very lucky. We've not experienced any kind of public accident or incident. So every time we say it, I go, like, don't say it. And, because it makes me nervous that you're putting the hex on it. So in the last 10 days or so, what has been on my mind in this committee, in my time here, has received several documents about the security and safety of this building, of 80 Windsor, sorry, because we just refer to them as numbers. This is 100, that's 80, 201. You hear us say it repeatedly, so we just know what we're talking about. Sorry about that, out in TV land. So the basics that have been presented to us in 3 different reports, and certainly we can reissue those reports to everybody if you don't have it. But the basics aren't being covered for security. We are employers. We have a certain responsibility to make sure that all employees are safe, not just those who carry tasers or that wear vests, but we have a responsibility for the folks downstairs. We have a responsibility for the firefighters who use our building and the public who uses our building. So I would consider, and maybe Mr. Metrick, you can help me with this, that some amount of the CIP cover the very first steps in making sure this building is secure. We can certainly have that conversation in executive session, but I think we really have to consider dollar amounts and an understanding of security for these properties. It has to be part of our public safety conversation, because the public uses this building quite frequently, as they do, 80. I think I'm laughing because I remember somebody once showed me how they could open a door in the borough with just an Allen wrench. And I thought it was like in an alternate universe, but it was happening. If we have those, I think we received maybe 2 or 3 assessments. There was definitely one part of Matrix. There was definitely part of what we received from KBCA. And I think there was one other that Mr. Wurtzel provided for us.
Yeah. That was pretty extensive.
That was extensive and expensive, but it has value in the sense that it was very broad in what,
And also, a 4th item we had was a proposal from a company that manages video security installations.
Yeah.
So to your point though, Gigi, this dovetails really nicely with FNA is going to tackle this summer the MOUs and the use agreements for property. So east and west wing of the library, the space up in Barrel Hall, to have carte blanche access by community groups and folks where we don't know necessarily who has keys and access. That has to then be folded in with public security policy and a use policy that is really clear about expectations of who uses space and has access to that. So let's work together with the safety approach and the use approach.
Yes, I think it's a good opportunity to bring all of that to the table, and I think the conversation has to be a little bit broader. But we're going to ask Mr. Metrick to kind of dig up that information so that this committee and of course then FNA to have those documents as well, to have the conversation about first steps and considerations.
And Michelle did some of this under property, so I know she has some stuff too that we can ask about.
Yeah, I think it's important, and I think we actually have a responsibility to make sure. We're a little behind the times in the sense that like you said, like the tasers are out of date, maybe the cars need to be updated, but rightfully so, the security of our properties has to be part of that conversation, and the public.
And to the extent we, for public safety, we have AED devices, we have certain things that are installed. We've started the conversation, we've started the ball, but we have.
We got to take the next steps. Sure, and if the next step is just to have that conversation, have an assessment of where to start, if we could start, all of those pieces and how it works together with other committees. I think it's vital. Mr. Metrick, anything?
You and I talked about
Yeah.
the agenda, and I put it in the, I actually typed the words in. I did it deliberately to say capital plan public safety spending because, Fran, I just wanted you to know that right now there's no, other than the financing payment on the fire company's radios, we don't have any requests from the fire company for any spending that would come out of the fire equipment fund in this 12-month capital plan cycle. So again, I'll reiterate, if there is something that the department is needing that would involve that fund, dollars from that fund, you and I should have a conversation and we should get this teed up with.
I don't anticipate anything in the next 12 months. With the addition of our new engine that we put in service this year, I don't anticipate a capital expenditure in the next 12 months, barring any exigent circumstances.
Clearly, yeah. Stuff comes up.
Right.
Especially at fires.
Yeah, and which is why, the capital plan is flexible. So that's, to some extent, it's flexible.
So, yeah, to that point, Gigi, we are flexible about addressing needs that come up for the borough, whether like an engine goes out to a fire and it doesn't come back.
Which we've experienced.
That can happen. But we also are, with the planning process, we're trying to be forward thinking about it and ask departments to say, well, what does your long-term schedule for capital replacement look like, and what should we be putting in the piggy bank today and thinking about spending tomorrow, so that when we get to that point, we're in a good position to handle the expenditure.
As we were this year with the new engine.
Yeah, so part of the planning process is to get things kind of set up beforehand, so that we're able to address things when they come up, and knowing that things might come up that we didn't picture, and then that's a different conversation that we have. But we want to try and get things really understood as well as we can in the moment before they happen, because another decision that has to be made in the next 4 weeks is how much the borough is going to borrow to fund the investment in its infrastructure. And it's a substantially impactful decision that's going to last for years and years and years, probably beyond everyone's tenure here in the borough. So just that's my little speech about why we're doing it this way.
Right. Got it. Any other questions or comments?
Not about the budget.
Yeah, not about the budget, right.
And I'm going to ask this question and then leave for work and look for the answer online.
Okay.
If
we have it.
If you have it. Just an update on the public safety issues that have been brought to our attention about the bridge, with pedestrians, with bikers, and with cars who continue, despite signs, road pavings, barricades, driving the other directions. So again, I apologize for asking a question. I'm going to exit for it, but if we can have any updates on that bridge safety, that would be helpful.
We'll have that conversation. Is there anything else you want to say other than that?
No, that's.
If you've got 1 minute,
Okay.
Sure.
they had a site visit yesterday morning with our traffic engineer, director of public works. I was unable to be there, and all of the concerns I had received and Ed had received were forwarded to John, the traffic engineer, prior to the site visit. They did a site visit. He has some adjustments and recommendations to make, some of which were made yesterday already.
Great.
Some widening of the ped path.
Oh, great.
We should have all of that in place by the end of the week, and the traffic engineer is putting all of those, it's not major changes, but all those
Fine-tuning.
Fine-tuning,
Sure.
Thank you, into something in writing.
Wonderful. So the ped path is wide at this point.
It's a little wider.
It's
It's
a-
wider than a Narberth sidewalk.
Okay, that's good.
Perfect.
That's astounding.
By far.
And, as I said, the reality is, there's nothing we're going to do that people that say,
It's not-
that arrow doesn't apply to me. Oh, that do not enter doesn't apply to
Sure.
me. Oh, that barricade doesn't apply to me, right?
Sure.
You
Sure.
can't policy stupid and ignorant. I don't know what the consequences other than if there happens to be a cop there to write a doozy of a ticket. And I think the public also has to understand that. Like,
Right.
there are some people that, irregardless of whatever we do, their life is more important than everybody else's. But I do appreciate the pedestrian.
And with that being said, I can ask the chief to increase enforcement, surprise enforcement on the other side of the borough, other side of the bridge when you get there. So
Right.
you
Okay.
never know if an officer is going to be stationed on the other side of the bridge.
Sure, and I think there certainly is an appeal to be made for those of you that see cars going the wrong way. You know, we're not asking you to confront anyone, but certainly everyone has a computer in their pocket, and you can certainly take a picture of a license plate.
Call
and
911.
call 911 and give your statement. And if it's you going the wrong way, we understand that you've got pickup, you've got soccer, you've got to get home, you've got all those things, but please, you're putting everyone else at risk by going the wrong way. We will find out the amount of that ticket, we will ask for increased enforcement, we will let everybody know what you're up against if you choose to go the wrong way.
And like I said, I'm happy to ask the chief to have increased enforcement, and you can't necessarily see over the bridge, which is why we don't want you going the wrong way.
Right. Right.
And so you don't know if an officer is going to be there to greet you.
Thank you. Thank you. Of course, and Councilwoman Rickers is leaving us to go on with her day. Anything else from this committee, anything new? Rob?
Well,
And Fran, thank you. Thank you as foreman of the Public Works crew for getting the bridge things in place ahead of
Yes.
schedule, under
Thank you.
budget, and
And with the changes that we've asked, Fran, we really do, we know that we ask a lot, and sometimes we haven't
Well, you know, it's,
changes.
as the councilwoman said, no amount of signage will stop someone who is determined to
Yeah,
do
sure.
whatever it is they're determined to do.
Yeah.
So the only close to 100% safe measure is to close it.
Right.
And any kind of vehicular traffic brings the safety level down, and
Sure.
that's just a reality.
Sure.
But that was true 10 years ago when the bridge was open to two-way traffic and the walkways were open. So
That's right.
it's true on every street in the town.
You're absolutely right.
So the only way to make things completely safe is there is no way. So,
Right.
but people will do what, you know, people don't,
Sure.
a lot of people don't stop at our stop signs either.
That's
And it
true.
has nothing to do with the bridge,
That's right. That's right.
unfortunately. And people don't get out of the way of fire trucks, go into fires. So they'd rather race ahead of you, assuming that you'll turn off somewhere. And then when we don't, they're stuck in the middle of an intersection that we're trying to get through.
Fran, I believe that's a state violation, isn't it?
I'm sure it's several.
Yeah, so at our next meeting, I'll be happy to read that.
No,
out
no, it's
loud.
just, you know,
What that is. And,
it's just something
well,
you learn to deal with.
Well, you know, yes, but you're putting firefighters, the person who's
Yep.
made the call, the building that's on
Absolutely.
fire, you're putting everybody
Oh, yeah.
in jeopardy. And the reality is that if it is a state violation, we should certainly
Everything is
enforce that as we
And-
can.
Everything's cumulative.
And as I've been saying at our monthly meetings, our enforcement has been increased. I've instructed the chief to increase it even further, as much as possible. And we're going to start issuing, you know, big tickets for people who aren't abiding by our
Right.
Yeah, no, the police are out there doing a great job.
Yeah.
But they can't be everywhere
Can't
all
be
the
everywhere.
time.
Exactly.
Can't be.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again, Fran, and to crew, and to Sean, making all these adjustments. I'm hoping that the wider pet path will also slow some of the cars down.
Yes,
You know,
a
as
narrow
they're
cartway.
crossing into the town, and I do worry about that pedestrian crossing there.
Absolutely.
So hopefully the cars will slow down.
There are signs at both ends of the bridge that say yield to pedestrians.
Right. Well, please yield to pedestrians. Please yield to, all over the borough, all over the region. Yield to pedestrians. It's okay to let someone walk in front of you and stop your car. It really is. It's okay. Anything further? Thank you for our special guest star for attending our meeting tonight. Thank you. Well behaved. Didn't have any questions. Didn't add anything to the agenda. It is now 8:30, so we are going to call the end of this meeting. Public safety is adjourned. Thank you.
Great.